Welcome, Martin, and thank you for presenting today. Can we give Martin a big round of applause for his presentation today?
Thank you. So, well, I've already been introduced, so I don't need to tell you that I'm not Italian. You didn't have to actually be in the restaurants yesterday and hearing me ordering a cappuccino after dinner to know that. Yes, I'm going to talk about something we did on the behalf of a cluster from earlier today, exploring whether or not there is a need or a market for a CERT for the Norwegian construction sector. So this was an initiative from this cluster known as Construction City. It's actually incorporated in Norway. And there are some key members in this cluster. The AF group, Statsbygg, basically are national government, I don't know what to call them, building authority. They build stuff, they build government offices and so on. And then there's OBOS, which is a large housing contractor and operator, and the Comnas, which is also some contractor. And like I said, this was an initiative that came from them. They made contact with us and said, okay, we've been thinking about having some sort of cybersecurity unit or competence center or something for our sector, and establishing a CERT or a C-CERT, whatever you want to call it, could be a contribution to such an initiative. The question was, does the industry, so people who are wearing the shoe, do they actually want it? Do they need it? Would it help them? That's what we want to find out. Now, just as sort of introduction to this, many of you know this, there are examples of such response units. We can call them sectoral response units, sort of free. Translated from Norwegian and probably some work in English, but we have several such in Norway. We have something called the CERT, which is the Norwegian Communications Authority, that they have their CERT. We have a CERT for the Norwegian health sector, sort of on a national level. Incidentally, they are based in Trondheim, where we live. There's also a CERT for the power industry, which also serves things like the petroleum industry and other sort of control system related OT kind of industries. Then we have the National Cybersecurity Center in Norway, our own very own version of the NCSC. There's also a financial CERT, which started out as a CERT, financial CERT in Norway, but then actually branched out. It's now a financial CERT for the whole of the Nordics, so covers, I think, definitely Sweden and Denmark and Norway, but I think also Finland, possibly also Iceland. And then we have a CERT for the Norwegian educational university network. So basically, the whole Norwegian universities, incidentally, also SINTEF actually belongs to this as an ISP. So we have several of these. There are also other. Might have, I mentioned yesterday, that we also now have a municipal CERT, sort of fledgling kind of CERT. I'm sure they have that in the employees. Now, the interesting, of course, is the NCSC, and it's sort of one CERT to rule them all. But so this is actually a real building in Oslo, where they have, it's very nice, sort of Gothic looking, isn't it? They actually have in this building, they actually want to have representatives from all these national level CERTs sit there, have office time in that building, and sort of be able to coordinate. This is an opportunity, but it's also maybe sometimes perceived as a challenge, because so the NCSC, it's sort of military, and if you are any kind of civilian entity, you get a little bit maybe jumpy when you are. It's suggested that you should share stuff with the military. Anyway, on to what we actually did. So, so this was work done by Andrea and myself, where we did, well, the plan was to do 1 hour video, sort of Microsoft Teams interviews. Again, COVID, so couldn't really do live interviews. So it was Andrea and I. So I led the interview, and I did all the notes, which is why she's the first author of the paper. We also did a small literature search. But of course, part of that literature search is also based on our previous experience, because we did a similar kind of job for the Norwegian Petroleum Safety Authority a few years back. So we did that basically the same exercise to interview Norwegian petroleum sector actors to see, okay, do you want your own CERT? In that case, the answer was no. We'll get back to what these people said a bit later. We did write up a nice report on this. It's all in Norwegian, so maybe not so accessible to you, but also why we wrote this paper in English. So, okay, we had a list, a fairly long list of potential interviewee subjects. We sent 24 invitations to various representatives of the industry. As you can tell, only 8 of those accepted. So again, we had hoped for more sort of help from the cluster. Unfortunately, there was some transfer responsibility issues there. So in the end, we actually had to send all the invitations, and that may have influenced the results. So, okay, 8 people accepted. 2 people said, yes, this is interesting, we don't have time. 5 people said, well, why are you asking me? No, this has got nothing to do with me, which is worrying maybe. And then, of course, 9 never responded at all, which is a bit disappointing. And of course, also of those 8, 1 got COVID. So in the end, we only had 7 interviews from the industry. So, okay, a bit low end there, but on the plus side, I'm not sure if I have a slide on that, but we did actually manage to saturate. So from the interviews that we did, the same kind of themes emerged. So, okay, so I think in the end, pretty good. In addition to those 7 interviews from the industry, we did 3 interviews with existing CERTs in Norway, and 1 interview of 1 large IT vendor or service provider, not to be named. I'm not sure if you can guess who it is. So, based on the interview notes, so incidentally, of course, in these kinds of things, you could always record the interviews. That, however, creates some sort of GDPR issues. So we decided to avoid that problem altogether and just didn't record anything. We just relied on Andrea's notes, which were very good, and thus used those notes to do the coding. We identified 4 main categories from the interviews. So it was about vulnerabilities, it was about incident management, about general challenges that the industry are perceiving, that they're facing, and then this basic question. So this is where we asked them. So if we gave you a CERT, a concert for the construction industry, would you want it? So based on the interviews, we can conclude that at least all the actors we spoke with agreed. Yes, of course, we have had IT security breaches. Not so surprising maybe, but definitely something that should indicate, okay, so there might be a need here. There was no obvious most frequent cause for such security breaches. So that sort of differed a little bit. Ransomware was a recurrent theme though. Also not surprising. We talked to different sized enterprises. So there were some very small ones, some big ones, some really big ones, and also a big variation then in the kind of resources they had available. So from the really big ones, they would have like whole departments with several people with each their own separate responsibilities. And then there were the other ones who just one-man operation that didn't even have a full responsibility, just took that responsibility. Okay, somebody's got to do it, I'll do it. All of them, no matter what size, actually use third-party vendors in the case of sort of a real incident happening. So the managed service providers, definitely, they have their work here. All of them perceive that there's an immaturity in the sector and that is a challenge. So it's not mature cyber-wise. And another thing is that there's also a variation well, one thing is variation in competence, which you would expect, but also in motivation. So it comes back to that you'll still have people saying, this is not that relevant to me, whether or not that's correct. It's also a thing that, as anywhere, good people are hard to find. Also, in this sector, they have this issue that many of the systems that they're using are actually older systems. So then you have the issue that you have something that's, I don't know, it could be 10 years old, it's no longer taught, and if you want to replace somebody who is an expert in that system, you really can't get a new graduate to do it because they don't know. There was a suggestion that at least in parts of the industry, there's a sort of a cowboy mentality. We'll just fix this ourselves. Don't worry about procedure. Don't worry about chain of command. Just fix it. Or sometimes that works, sometimes not so well. And this is the big question, of course, the market for CERT. Upon embarking on this project, the very first thing I did was I checked, is the domain concert.no available? It was, so I just grabbed it. More than fool me. But amazing. Maybe I can sell it. Who knows? Concert, I don't know. It could be some music producer wants it. So all the actors agreed that such a entity, concert, could be useful. And there were two of the bigger actors saying, okay, if this thing is established, we could consider just sort of kicking out our SOC that we are currently outsourcing and just focus on having this concert instead. But maybe not so surprisingly, the smaller ones, not so much. They seem to have more of an interest in a forum where they could have sort of exchanging information and experiences. So, and that's the thing, based on our interviews, there's nobody currently doing that. So nobody's actually sharing experiences, sharing information about incidents. They're all just keeping it to themselves. It's sort of the old school approach to cybersecurity. However, all of them agreed, yeah, this would be really great. We could do that. And they also said that so this is sort of cybersecurity is not an area where it makes sense for us to use it as a competitive advantage. It's better for all of us if everyone can raise their level of cybersecurity. So there's no reason to sort of not cooperate on this. There's also the question, sort of this was a question left a little bit hanging in the air, and we're talking about the cybersecurity skills shortage. And there was a question, so if we created this concert, could we staff it? Could we actually get somebody to work there? Open question. There's also the issue that, as I mentioned initially, there are several CERTs already operating in the Norwegian market, and several of them could be an option for various parts of the people we spoke with. I mentioned the CERT for the power industry, because if you have somebody who's building power stations, maybe they would be relevant to deal with them. The municipal CERT, certainly, all the municipal buildings, there will be a potential participant there. One question was that, so if you don't have one CERT, if you don't have, decide that, okay, for this industry, for the building and automation and building management, construction industry, we have this CERT that we relate to, might be difficult in any given instance to decide, okay, which CERT should I call now? Is it the municipal CERT? Is it the power CERT? whatever. So that was another open question. Now the CERTs we talked to, apologies about the Fox, but you know, what is the Fox say? No, they agreed that if you establish an information sharing and analysis center, no matter what you decide at any later stage, it would be good to start there. So establish an ISAC. They didn't really agree whether creating the concert itself at this time would be a good idea or not. But so it just comes back to that they said they agree that the most important thing is to have somewhere to share information. So, there is something known as the Enabling EU ISACs project, which is an EU-funded project run by I think it's PricewaterhouseCoopers in the Netherlands. They have their own website there. You can check it out. And this project has been created to, well, basically empower, enabling, helping create new ISACs across Europe. Maybe primarily European-wide ISACs, but they're open for as long as they're running for conversation with anybody. So their basic impression of what it takes to run an ISAC is that, okay, for each member organization, they should commit 1 to 2 days, so working days per month, to collaboration with the ISAC. And the organization, once established, needs to, of course, sort of promote itself and its activities. It needs to have a secretariat, a chair, co-chair, maybe secretary, maybe a treasurer, those kinds of things. And of course, the idea about the ISAC is to organize meetings, so primarily physical meetings, but these days, well, frequently virtual meetings. And it's useful to have a digital platform. There is such a platform which is organized by this Empowering EU ISACs project, which we've been given access to. As a member, of course, you're expected to participate in these meetings and also participate, and that's, of course, the important thing, to participate in this digital platform, which is where you can share information in a secure and trustworthy manner. And then there are other various collaborative activities that you would be expected to participate in. Now, it's usual that you will have a core group of organizations that sort of organize this and run it on a day-to-day basis. Some ISACs that exist, they outsource that. So they actually hire somebody to sort of run the secretariat. It's also an option. Personally, I think it would work better if you actually have a core group of stakeholders that actually sort of, well, have skin in the game, so to speak. So the conclusion is that at this moment, there's not sufficient maturity or support in the industry to create a full CERT or C-CERT for the Norwegian construction sector. The big actors were more positive than small ones, fair enough. We found it maybe the most worrying that there were so many of the people we tried to reach out to who just didn't see the problem. And, you know, of course, one thing, of course, those that say, okay, this is not us, those that didn't respond at all, and I have no idea what they did. The good thing, though, is that all the people we spoke with were positive to the establishment of an ISAC. So, one good thing. And that's our recommendation to the cluster that hired us. Go ahead and create an ISAC for the Norwegian construction sector. And then once you've run that for some time, you can assess, okay, maybe now there is market, there's need for a concert. And you know, that's, as I said, the existing CERTs thought that no matter what, establishing an ISAC is a very good first step. So, and this is exactly what they did. So they they announced, I think it was last month, that yes, we are creating this. They didn't call it MySAC, but what did they call it? Well, this is in Norwegian. It says that, okay, we are joining forces for cybersecurity, basically. It will be formally sort of there will be some sort of formal establishment after the summer. So right, and that concludes my talk. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.